Welcome back to DRS Dispatch and welcome back to This Week in Formula 1. This week is the week of the 18th of May 2026 and it is finally again race week, this being the week of the 2026 Canadian Grand Prix. But before we get into that, let's start off with the last week's news. So the weekly news, there's not really very much to talk about this week, but there's a few things. So we'll start off with Toto Wolff on the importance of keeping the pressure off of Antonelli, claiming that this is a long game, and he's not wrong. Certainly Antonelli is very young, so I think there's a lot of questioning around whether he'd be able to pull through when push comes to shove at the end of the year. Though ultimately I think he will, and it seems like Wolff is really trying to focus on, or Toto is really trying to focus on keeping the pressure off of him, which I think is really important, certainly because he's so young. It's only the start of the season though, so who's to say how things will go again? It's still very early. But yeah, I definitely agree. It's a long game. I think it's important to keep the pressure off your rookies. I think that's something that McLaren didn't really do a very good job at last year. Certainly there was a lot of pressure on both Oscar and Lando, though neither of them really are rookies at this point. I guess the contrast is Antonelli is very much a rookie, it only being his second season in the sport, though it was only Oscar's third, so yeah, certainly there's a lot of pressure there, reasonably so. And yeah, overall I think it's definitely a good call from Toto. I think it's important to keep the pressure off of your 19-year-old driver, and yeah, next story. Let's talk about CEO Dan Tauris on the importance of experience in building Cadillac up from scratch. Certainly, we saw him bring both Perez and Bottas onto the grid, who are two very experienced drivers, and I thought that was a really smart decision at the time, so it's not surprising to me to hear that he felt similarly. When you're building a new team from scratch, it's really important to have that benefit of experience from drivers who have been around the block for so long, because you'll benefit more from a engineering perspective from their opinion than you will somebody who's younger and doesn't have as much experience. So having Bottas and Perez ultimately I think will benefit Cadillac in the long run, but we'll see how it goes obviously. Unfortunately though for Cadillac, unsurprisingly, they've kind of kept a little bit under the radar with the team not really doing that well. I mean, we suspected they would be a back marker, and it seems like we were right. And yeah, so interesting from Cadillac. I agree with Tauris in saying that it's definitely important to build from that experience, and I hope that they continue to do so. So yeah. Next story, let's talk about Alpine bolstering their leadership team as they name a new deputy technical director. Alpine has been on somewhat of a hot streak recently, them being the top of the mid-pack, so good on them, I suppose. Though I have expressed my disdain about Flavio Briatore and Alpine in general in the past, they've now hired Jason Summerstill, who apparently returns to Enstone, which is exciting for him. I'm not sure if he was involved in the Alpine projects before, I have no idea. As for his specific resume, I also am not entirely sure, but they've hired him as their new deputy technical director, so I don't doubt he's somebody with a lot of experience and with a lot of important experience really for the Alpine team. And as it says, he was previously a key member of Enstone-based operations aerodynamics department between 2010 and 2011 when they competed under Renault. So he worked for Renault. That makes sense. Yeah, so that's not surprising to me. I assume he probably still has friends within the Alpine company that work for Alpine still. So that's not really surprising for me. And yeah, good on him. Hopefully he goes well. Obviously, I don't really know much about his experience or anything like that, but I don't doubt he'll be a great addition to Alpine's ever-growing team. And yeah, good on him. Next story, let's talk about the Madgering. So the Madgering is coming up in 2 races time. I think it's the race after Monaco, which is round 6 Monaco. It's in a couple of weeks' time. And Carlos Sainz was the first ever driver to complete laps at the Madgering. The Madgering is kind of replacing Imola, you could argue. Well, not you could argue, it is pretty much replacing Imola. And he went around the track with Lance Barretto, and we have some photos of it. So obviously the Madgering is an entirely new circuit, which isn't something we see every day, so that's exciting. I've seen a lot of kind of disdain on Twitter around the Madgering and on online in general. I'm not really sure why. it's at the point where it's kind of difficult to tell if it's a good track or not. We kind of have to wait until the race, really. But certainly a lot of the images that they showed here made it look kind of like it was almost like not even like, it still very much felt like it was in construction. The race, like, it's not that far away. It's in June. We're getting towards the end of May, so I'll be curious to see how they're able to pull it together in time for the actual event. But it seems like an interesting race. Obviously, last year we had that computer-generated kind of 3D video of the actual circuit, and it seemed interesting. But yeah, as you can see here, there's still a whole lot of construction going on. So I don't honestly know if I'm sure they'll have it ready in time, but certainly it seems like an interesting prospect, for sure. So yeah, pretty cool. I'm excited to see what the Magic has in store, and yeah, hopefully it's a good race. So yeah, next story: Max Verstappen made his Nürburgring 24 Hours debut over the break, though unfortunately he missed out on a potential victory following a technical issue in the car, which is a massive shame for him. I wasn't really paying that much attention to this specific event, unfortunately, but it's a shame to hear that Max wasn't able to ultimately clutch that win, because a similar thing happened last time he raced in Nürburgring. WEC, if I'm not, well, it's not WEC, but in a 24 hours endurance racing event, a similar thing happened where he was just unable, where his car was disqualified post-event. So it's a shame to see that happen again for him. But yeah, Max Verstappen's prospects outside of Formula One continue to look bright. I still feel this is him kind of speccing up to leave the sport permanently or retire from Formula One. And I'm interested to see how he continues to go. Pretty cool for him. Unfortunate about his engine problem there. That's a shame for him and his team. But yeah, overall pretty solid race for him if he was leading before then, so can't complain. Though of course, you never want to have an engine problem and drop out of the race. So yeah, pretty good for Max. That's that pretty much. Last story of the week, where Toto Wolff again admits that Mercedes need to respond to competitors, as he confirms that they're bringing upgrades to Canada. We already knew that this was the case. Mercedes was basically running the same car that they were running the first 3 rounds of the year, going into the Miami Grand Prix, but going into the Canadian Grand Prix, they're bringing a whole litany of upgrades, and I think that we'll see them jump a lot of the other teams that are kind of catching up now because of that. And I definitely don't think Toto's wrong that they say they need to respond, but that seems it's kind of like pointing out the blatantly obvious to me, where it's like, yes, they're bringing in a package though, so I don't doubt they will respond, but I'm interested to see how it goes. And with that, talk about the 2026 Canadian Grand Prix. This time, of course, it is taking place from May 22nd to the 25th, so that's this Thursday to Sunday, or Friday to Monday, depending on what part of the world you're in. For me, it's taking place at 6 a.m, so it's going to be an early wake up maybe, but we'll see. And yeah, it is round 5, of course. It's 2026. It takes place in the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, as it has for several years. Don't think anything is changing significantly for the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. And we've got some straight line mode zones down in Sector 2 straight. Interesting down the back, and then all down Sector 3 you've got that massive straight leading into the wall corner. Well, I'm not sure where I think there's like a corner with like a wall, if you know what I'm talking about. They always have this graphic where it's like, how close are they to the wall? So I don't really know what turn that is, but yeah, I think that might be turn 8 or maybe turn 9. Anyway, that's besides the point. It's the same circuit as you've known and come to expect. It's the Canadian Grand Prix, which is a Grand Prix that I always enjoy. George Russell, of course, won this Grand Prix last year, unless I'm mistaken. I'm pretty sure he did, though. And yeah, it should be an interesting Grand Prix. It's always unique because there's not really any other Grand Prix that takes place in that kind of part of the world, that kind of upper northern hemisphere. A lot of them are kind of in Central Europe, which is further down, really. So it's an interesting Grand Prix, but I'm excited to see how it is. So let's talk about the driver standings, with Kimi Antonelli 20 points ahead of George Russell in P1 still. Lando Norris jumped up to P4 ahead of Hamilton, who dropped down into P5, with Verstappen jumping 2 places into P7, jumping ahead of Behrman and Gasly, who both dropped a place as well. Other than that, the actual standings remains completely unchanged with the qualifying head-to-head. We have Oscar Piastri still outscoring Lando Norris 3-1. George Russell with a similar score. Max Verstappen and Isaac Hadjar still equal, which is interesting. Charles Leclerc heavily outscoring Lewis Hamilton 3-1. Carlos Sainz out qualifying Alex Albon 3-1. Liam Lawson out qualifying Arvid Lindblad 3-1. Fernando Alonso heavily out qualifying Lance Stroll, which is not surprising, though Aston is kind of in a weird position right now, so it's not really it's not a very important kind of statistic to look at because Aston Martin's in a weird position, though it's always kind of been like that over there. Oliver Bowman is outscoring or out qualifying Esteban Ocon still, which is interesting. Certainly there's been a lot of questions around Ocon, and I think we might possibly be seeing an Ocon leave soon, but we'll see. Gabi Bortoleto and Nico Hülkenberg are equal with about a 1 second average time distance, which is, I think, the highest out of any team, which is interesting. Franco Colapinto is below Pierre Gasly 3-1, with about a half second in it there, with Valtteri Bottas and Sergio Perez equaling out with pretty much no time between them. Yeah, so interesting results there. And yeah, let's talk about the actual race and my predictions. I think I got the previous race wrong. I think I said George would win and I was incorrect there, with Kimi Antonelli winning again. So maybe he'll win again, and maybe hey, if Kimi Antonelli wins again this week, I'm definitely going to be going for him next week, though we'll see how it goes. My big three remains unchanged. I still think it's Ferrari, Merc, McLaren, though Ferrari have kind of dropped back a little bit, unfortunately, but I don't really think the previous kind of 2 to 4 races honestly have been emblematic of the kind of car that they have. I think if we had gone to Bahrain, which was of course completely understandable why we didn't, I think we would have seen Ferrari dominate there, though just unfortunately that didn't happen. So yeah, I'm predicting that the sprint winner will be George Russell. Of course, George Russell won the Canadian Grand Prix, and he's actually gone quite well in that Grand Prix the past 2 years. He's had a lot of success there. So I think he'll end up winning the sprint. Though George's kind of track record in sprints hasn't always been the best, I think he'll have a good chance there. In terms of my race winner, I'm predicting Lando Norris will win the race. I'm not really sure why. I don't have a good reason. It's just I have a feeling. Lando's been going really well the past like kind of 2 races ever since we came back from that month-long break, and I think he'll finally grapple that win like he so sorely wants. But overall, I think the winning team will be Mercedes again, with the upgrades they bring ultimately benefiting them and making them the dominant force again. So yeah, but we'll have to wait and see. Hopefully it goes well in the Canadian Grand Prix. So that was this week in Formula 1 for the week of the 18th of May. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, make sure to like, subscribe, and all that other YouTubery stuff. If there's anything I missed this week in Formula 1, I'll cover it next week in Formula 1. Just leave a comment down in the comment section down below and let me know. And yeah, that's all. Stay tuned for later in the week where we're going to be, again, stay tuned for later in the week where I'm going to be watching all of Formula 1 so you don't have to, continuing the 1951 Formula 1 season. And yeah, thanks so much for watching. So bye for now. Peace.